mercy is what I beseech. Keep in my heart your remembrance, and in your deen allow me to advance. Help me in my quest, permit me to pass the ultimate test. Help me in my quest, permit me to pass the ultimate.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to this new episode of Ask Huda. However, this is a recorded episode, so do not try and attempt to call because you will not be answered. Actually, let me rephrase that. All the questions that we will take in tonight's episode, inshallah, will be from your emails. Fahim sent us this first question. He says that, is it permissible to limit your conversation with a person who verbally abuses? And because that person is older, there is no one who can persuade that person to stop. I usually opt for ignoring and for forgiveness, and advise others to forgive too, but this is getting worse over the years, and I've forgiven for more than a decade. Islam is a religion of tolerance. It is a religion of forgiveness. Yet it is not a religion of weakness. So your forgiveness and tolerance, they originate from your strength, from your iman. And hence, one should not humiliate himself. Now, in the case that Fahim is telling us about, this issue is reoccurring in so many places and times. People usually complain of elderly doing this. And we've addressed this before, and we said that reaching such an old age is a bless from Allah Azza wa Jal. However, it is a menace if it is not accompanied by righteous deeds and good character. And that is why the Prophet said, ﷺ, the best among you are those who Allah prolongs their life and excels their moral character, and at the same time they offer righteous and good deeds. So the elders who fail to have good character with the youngsters, they have a problem. Nevertheless, for the youngsters, they should tolerate, they should respect, they should give an advice in a diplomatic way so that it can be accepted by these elders. However, if this does not work, then in this case, you may reduce and minimize your contact and the period of sitting with that person. So you have to try and have a win-win situation. Completely cutting them off is not a solution. On the contrary, it can be a major sin, especially if this person is one of your next of kin. And mixing all the time with them is a big problem, because they verbally abuse you and they harm you or hurt you knowingly or unknowingly. So the best thing to do is to minimize mixing up with them to the bare minimum and limit that to what Allah Azza wa Jal would not punish you for. So instead of seeing them every day, see them once a week. Instead of going to them and mix with them for 2-3 hours, give them a call, or just sit for 5 minutes and then apologize because you have an appointment. By this, you would have a win-win situation, inshallah. Noor says, could you please tell me about the Muslim and his self-esteem? A Muslim respects himself and he honors himself without going into arrogance, yet not humiliating himself. So you have to have confidence in yourself. You have to have a positive way of looking at things. And all of this falls under the umbrella of thinking positively of Allah Azza wa Jal and seeking His guidance and seeking His support. Because so many times we hear people say, have confidence in yourself. Do this, do that, without relating it to Allah Azza wa Jal. And this is wrong, because depending on yourself is something that is not acceptable. In the dua of the Prophet ﷺ, he used to say, Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum bi rahmatika astaghith. Aslih li sha'ni kullah wa la takilni ila nafsi tarfat ayn. Ya Hayy, O who is all living, the sustainer of the heavens and the earth, in your mercy I seek refuge. Fix all of my affairs and do not make me depend on myself, not even for a glimpse. Do not depend on yourself. Depend on Allah Azza wa Jal. However, once you do this, you should have confidence in Allah Azza wa Jal, and you should trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you should respect yourself and not humiliate yourself and not let people look down at you, but without arrogance, without prejudice. You have to respect yourself and be honorable, and not put yourself in situations where you will be humiliated, as the Prophet ﷺ forbade us from doing such a thing. And this happens when you respect yourself. So people will respect you. When you are a person who honors others, they will honor you. When you treat them in an Islamic fashion, you don't lie, you don't cheat, you don't break promises, they will respect you more and more, and this would build your self-esteem. Roshain says, what is the definition of utmost piety for a Muslimah, for a Muslim woman? Can we call this lady a pious Muslim who keeps voluntary fasts, offers tahajjud, memorizes the Quran, covers herself properly, tries her level best to lower her gaze? Can we call her a righteous or a pious woman? All of the things mentioned here are but few of the characteristics of a believer, a male or a female. Yet it is much more bigger and greater. So all of these good deeds are good, but they do not qualify a person to be a true pious person, because you lack sincerity. So to be pious, you have to have the first thing on your agenda is to be sincere. All of your work has to be for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. Also, you have to have moral conduct. The Prophet ﷺ was told about a woman who prays night prayers and fasts daytime, but she abuses her neighbors. She does harm to her neighbors. The Prophet said, she is in hell. Even if she prays well and she fasts well and she gives money to the poor, but because her character is not good, the Prophet said she's in hell. And in another hadith, the Prophet said, the closest, he said, the closest among you to me on the day of judgment in paradise are the best in their moral conduct, in their character, in their ethics, in their akhlaq. So the more you are in trying your level best to excel in your moral conduct, in your ethics, the closer you are to the Prophet ﷺ. Therefore, you have to know these characteristics and try to implement them in your life, try to have them, and try to be known by them. And then, inshallah, you will be among those who are pious and righteous. Salma says, what should we say between the prostrations? The Prophet ﷺ used to say, when he sits between the two prostrations in prayer, he used to say, Rabbi ghfirli, Rabbi ghfirli, and he repeats it. Or you may say, Allahumma ghfirli, warhamni, wa'afini, wahdini, warzuqni, and in some narrations, wajburni. All of these are part of the authentic hadiths to be said and to be supplicated in between the two prostrations. Aisha says, my menses has been long for 21 days now. The blood isn't spotting nor brownish. It is purely menstruation blood and has regular flow. My normal cycle is 8 to 10 days. This is the first time. What should I do, especially with my salah, with my prayer? Should I make one ghusl and just wash up every fard prayer, or ghusl every fard prayer? A woman gets her cycle normally 6 to 7 days every month. This is the norm. Sometimes this is prolonged for more than that. And this is usually a vein that is making the blood poor. And that is why scholars differed. How long can the cycle be? What's the maximum of it? And what's the minimum? And there isn't anything specific in the Sharia, in the Islamic law, that says this is the max, that's it, and this is the minimum. So jurors said that a month is 30 days. And if the cycle is more than half of the month, this is not the norm. So they say if a woman's cycle is 6, 7, or 8 days, and some months it goes up to 10, then the whole 10 are her menses. Once they went into 14, they say the whole 14 is menses. But if it is 15 or more, this is more than half of the month. In this case, up to 15, we consider that to be menses, and then the extra days are considered to be istihada, which is blood that comes due to a vein, but it is not her menstruation. And if we say this, after the 15th day, she is obliged to make ghusl, and then she may pray every prayer on time and make wudu for that. And of course, the blood is impure because it's coming from the private parts, so she has to clean herself before praying. What about if the blood keeps on going? Well, in this case, she has to determine when her menses was, and she has to consider that period of time of the month to be her menses. So if a woman usually gets her menses from the 3rd day of the month till the 10th, 7 days. And then all of a sudden she kept on seeing blood 24/7. It doesn't stop the whole month. In this case, we tell her, once the 10th day of the month is over, take your ghusl and pray and do everything that normal people do. Until the 3rd of the month, of the next month, you have to stop, because this is the period that your menses usually comes. From the 3rd till the 10th, depending on when it used to come to you, and then you may continue this on and on until it is solved. Of course, there's nothing wrong in seeking a doctor's opinion. You have to go and check if they can solve this problem with medication, inshallah. Muhammad sends us a question. He says, a drop or smaller than a drop of urine fell on my clothes, and I saw this after I prayed. What should I do? Now, the most authentic opinion is, if a person has an impurity on his garment, on his body, or on the spot he's praying on, and he knows about this, his prayer is invalid. Because prayer cannot be performed without the condition of purity. And purity is divided into 2 types. In Arabic they call رفع الحدث وإزالة الخبث. رفع الحدث is uplifting the moral impurity, and this is done by performing wudu or by having a total bath, depending on the impurity, whether it's minor or major. And this is not something physical you can see. So it is a description. When a person answers the call of nature, now he is impure, minor impurity. I cannot see that. Once he performs wudu, this impurity has been uplifted. I cannot see that, but it is a description. So this is part one. Part two is removing the impurity, the physical impurity. رفع إماتة الخبث. So a physical impurity, whether it's on your body, on your thobe or clothes, or on the place you're praying on, a condition that you have to remove it so that your prayer would be valid. If a person does not know that he has this impurity, do we say, repeat your prayer because he knew after he finished his prayer? Or do we say your prayer is valid? It's an issue of dispute among scholars. And the most authentic opinion is that if you did not know about it, as Brother Muhammad's case, in this case, your prayer is valid. So, because you did not know about this impurity, and you only found out after you finished your prayer is valid. And the evidence behind this is the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ once prayed in congregation. He was leading the prayer, and he was praying in his sandals or slippers. And the companions prayed in their slippers. They used to follow the Prophet ﷺ in every single detail. And in the middle of the prayer, the Prophet ﷺ took off his sandals and his slippers. So the companions, all of them, took off their sandals. When the Prophet concluded the prayer, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he asked them, why did you take off your sandals? The companions said, you took it off, so we took it off as well. And the Prophet told them and justified to them his action. He said, while in prayer, Jibreel, the archangel, peace be upon him, came to me and told me that there is impurity on my sandals. So I took them off. So whenever any one of you come into the masjid, he should look into his sandals to check whether there is impurity or not. Now one would say, this hadith is a clear example and a clear evidence that if you knew about the impurity after the prayer was over, your prayer is valid. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ did not break his prayer in the second or third rak'ah and then told them, listen, let's pray again because there is an impurity on my shoes or my sandals. No, he continued praying, which means that the rak'ah or two or three that he prayed with his sandals that had impurity, but without his knowledge, were valid. And of course, one would say, one may ask, how would the Prophet pray in his sandals? Is this allowed? The answer is, unfortunately, because we don't have knowledge, we tend to see things and we're shocked about them. And sometimes we, in anger, protest, not knowing that this is from the Sunnah. Praying in your sandals, praying in your shoes, praying in your slippers, this is part of the Sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ said, pray in your sandals or in your slippers, because the Jews do not pray in their slippers. So it is part of the Sunnah. If you are in an airport or in the market or at the park and you want to pray, you don't have to take your shoes off. Just check that there is no impurity on them and then pray. This is a Sunnah. However, you have to be careful, because I don't want any of the youngsters who are enthusiastic, mashallah, and have strong iman, going to Isha prayer after listening to this with his shoes to the masjid. Now, this is not acceptable, because the masjid is covered with carpet, and your shoes would make this carpet dirty, not impure, but dirty. And this doesn't go well with the people. So you cannot in defiance say, no, this is sunnah, I'm going to do it. No, this is unadvisable. This is not advisable, because you have to preach with wisdom, with good preaching, so that people would accept your call, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. We have an email from Brother Basit. He says, is it allowed to swear in the name of Allah, saying, I'll avoid such and such haram actions? What is the expiation for one who breaks such a vow? First of all, you are ordered not to do anything haram. So, for example, smoking is haram. It's harmful, it kills you, and it's a waste of money, and the smell is dirty, and it gives you health problems. And Allah tells you, do not kill yourself. So it is prohibited to smoke. Now, someone tried to quit smoking and kick the habit. He couldn't. So in a moment of truth, he says, Wallahi, I will not smoke a single cigarette after today. And a couple of weeks later, he fell weak and he smoked. So initially, is he allowed to swear? The answer is yes. You may swear to prevent yourself from doing something, whether halal or haram. Of course, with haram, it's by default, but if it gives you an incentive, then it's okay. But what happens if someone breaks his vow and he does what he took an oath not to do? In this case, he has to give expiation. And the expiation for breaking your oath is to feed 10 poor people from the middle of what you eat usually. So do not buy them one single flat hamburger. The norm that the jurors say is that you give half a sa' for each poor person, which is equivalent to 1.25 kilogram of rice. But if you buy a full meal, a good normal meal, then this would suffice. Yani, for example, one says, listen, I'll buy 2 falafel sandwiches. Falafel is nothing. And yes, it fills them up, but this is not the normal meal of the middle of what we usually eat. So buy them some cooked rice with half a chicken, for example. That would be a normal meal. So you do this, or you clothe them, or you free a slave. Choose one of these 3. If financially you are incapable of doing any of these 3, then the second option would be, if you're not financially able, Allah tells you to fast 3 days. A lot of the Muslims jump to fasting, though they have money. They think that, okay, I said, Wallahi, I'm not going to school tomorrow, and then my father forced me to go, so I have to give expiation, I'll fast 3 days. No, you have to feed 10 people, 10 poor people. And if you are unable, then you may fast 3 days. Should these days be consecutive in a row? No, you can split them, inshallah. Nadia says, I know that there are rules about reading the Quran. That is, we should be in the state of wudu before touching the book. How does this rule apply to electronic devices? I usually read the Quran on my phone or laptop. Also, should we be in wudu if we only recite from memory, not touching or reading? I'll begin with your second question. You do not need to be in the state of wudu when you read the Quran or recite it from memory. And a lot of the sisters, especially from the subcontinent, they come and say, when we recite the Quran, do we have to wear our hijab? Do we have to cover our hair? When we hear the adhan, is it must that we wear the hijab? And all of this is baseless. These are baseless things. You, in your house, are not obliged at all to cover your head when hearing the adhan or when reciting the Quran at all. So this is baseless. one would say, oh, it's best that I do it. No, it's not. Because now you're innovating. Now you're bringing something to the deen that is not part of it. As for reciting the Quran and touching the PDAs or the mobile phones or the laptops to read the Quran from it, you do not require wudu for that. Why? Because these characters, these letters, these words, they are digital. So once you turn them off, they're gone. They are not like the actual Quran, which is written on paper. And this requires wudu. And this is what the scholars say. Of course, if you perform wudu, would I be rewarded? Definitely. That is a plus, and it is definitely more recommended to do than to recite it without. But sometimes you're on the street, you're on the bus, in the train, you are in a queue, you're waiting for your appointment at the doctor's, and you're not in the state of wudu, and you have the Quran. So instead of reading a magazine or chit-chatting or watching the TV in the waiting room, you do something useful and you recite the Quran from your electronic device without the need of making wudu, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Rafat says, I work in a school in Saudi Arabia, an international school, or a school that belongs to a particular country. And in our school assembly, it begins with the recitation of the Quran. But after that, there will be some 2 or 3 items like news, thought, and there will be a dance. Then it ends with this country's national anthem, which we all know is full of shirk. It deeply hurts me that we are beginning with the Quran and ending with shirk. So I request you to please guide me in this regard. Moreover, our school principals are mostly Muslims. Please guide me. This is a big problem. Now, the school is in Saudi Arabia, but we know that some schools that belong to different countries. So you have an American school, a British school, Indian school, Bangladeshi school, Sri Lankan schools. They have their own curriculums because they follow their embassies. And most of these practices are governed by the management. So to begin their day with a recitation of the Quran, this is not part of the Sunnah, but if it is a reminder of the Quran and the people, the students, the pupils that is, and the students would hear the Quran, this is, inshallah, okay. A reminder of hadith, that's beautiful. Some news clips saying that this happened and this took place, so and so. Okay, this is in the very early morning. Then to have a dance, now this is an issue. This is not part of Islam. And to have the national anthem of that country, which includes shirk words in it. So praising the gods or praising the land or saying that we worship the land or whatever, this is unacceptable totally. Now, if the principal is Muslim, then he should stop this immediately, because he's a Muslim first before being a citizen. So you do not accept anything that goes against Quran or Sunnah if you're a Muslim. Otherwise, leave your religion and follow something else, because you cannot have both at the same time. Either you believe or you disbelieve. And this is a big problem, not only in your school, Rafat, but it is a problem in the Muslim world. When you have those who are Muslim by name, controlling places, agencies, companies, ministries, etc., and they do not implement Islam. In some cases, they are more against Islam than the enemies of Islam. So you probably find someone who is a Christian, but he is not as evil as that pretending to be a Muslim, because they want to be more Roman than the Romans themselves. And this is a problem. Inferiority complex that they have. And it would never go until they feel that they've satisfied their masters. The Muslims should abide by the Quran and Sunnah. There's nothing wrong in being patriotic. There's nothing wrong in loving your country, as long as you follow the Quran and Sunnah. But if your country tells you to do something that is forbidden, that Allah tells you it's haram, what would you choose? To love and obey your country, or to love and obey Allah and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? This is a true fork of the road, and your decision would determine whether you go to paradise or hell. So I advise whoever runs such institutions to fear Allah Azza wa Jal. Now you are on your chair, in your high position, and it's not going to last. Nothing lasts on earth. Nothing lasts at all except Allah's face. And don't be delusional. You will leave your post soon, and all what would remain for you in your grave are your good deeds. So if you do bad deeds for a raise, or to please your masters, or for the people to praise you, then you have a problem, because Allah Azza wa Jal would not be pleased with you, and hence He would make everyone displeased with you. He would be displeased with you, and you will find the wrath of that in this life and in your grave, and also in the hereafter. So we should fear Allah Azza wa Jal and do our level best. Muhammad Anas says, I saw in QA, it is more profitable for women to pray inside her room than in the masjid. According to the Manhaj al-Salaf, how it became, or it becomes acceptable, because the wives of the Prophet ﷺ did salah and i'tikaf in his masjid after his death. Allah knows the best. For women, is dhuhr more rewardable than Salatul Jumu'ah? So Muhammad's Anas' question is straightforward and simple. He says, we know in Q&A, I think he's referring to my website or maybe islamqna.info, that it is more rewardable for a woman to pray in her room rather than to pray in the masjid. But the confusion he has is that the Prophet ﷺ's wives, after his death, used to pray in the masjid and used to do i'tikaf. I'tikaf is seclusion, which is done in the last 10 nights of Ramadan. Well, Muhammad Anas, the news is that the Prophet's wives, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and may Allah be pleased with them, used to pray in his life with him in the masjid, and they used to make i'tikaf with him during his lifetime. So this does not contradict or go against that praying in your room is more profitable or rewardable. This shows you that there are two levels of reward. To pray in the room for a female is more rewardable than praying in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. This is what the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when a woman came to him and said, I want to pray with you in the masjid. And women used to pray in the masjid. The Prophet told her, alayhi salatu wasalam, about her house, that praying in your house is better than praying in my masjid. And praying inside your house, in like the hall, is better than praying in your house that includes the backyard and the garden or whatever. And praying inside, for example, the living room is better than praying in the hall. And praying in your own bedroom is better than praying in the living room. So the more a woman is far away from people being able to see her, this is better than praying in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. And compare this with what we see from women mixing with men without any shame, working together, going to mixed schools and universities, and chatting and socializing. Yet the Prophet tells the believing women, be as far as possible from men. Be with your mahrams, be your loved ones, but non-mahrams, strangers, be as far as possible from them. So this is the best and highest level. Now if a woman says, no, I'd like to pray in the masjid, it's your right. You can do that. The Prophet said, ﷺ, do not prevent women from entering the masjids or going to the masjids. So this is the right of a woman. She has a choice. You want grade A, you want to go to 5-star accommodation or to 3 stars accommodation. It's up to you. The Prophet has advised you, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that praying in the masjid is far greater and far better for you. Praying in your home, in the room, is far better and greater for you than praying in the masjid. And Muhammad Anas says that praying dhuhr prayer, is it more rewardable than praying Friday for a woman in the masjid? And the answer is definitely yes. For a woman to pray dhuhr in her home is more rewardable than for her to leave her home and go to the masjid and listen to the khutbah, to the sermon, and pray with the Muslims and go back again to her home. This has no doubt in it, because this is what the Prophet ﷺ has recommended. Ahmed says, is the punishment for apostasy death in Islam? I heard someone say that one hadith is not enough evidence for this. The consensus of all scholars that if a person changes his religion from Islam to any other religion, the punishment should be execution, death. However, it is not for Tom, Dick, or Harry to carry out this punishment. This cannot be done by any person without following the procedure. Meaning, if someone says that he doesn't believe in the Prophet ﷺ, he's a Muslim. He says, I don't believe in the Prophet anymore ﷺ. This is an act of apostasy. Can we go and chop his head off? The answer is no. First of all, you have to make sure that the conditions are fulfilled and that there are no obstacles preventing the description of apostasy to fit him. How is this to be done? There has to be a panel of judges, Muslim judges or scholars, who would sit with this individual, interrogate him, advise him, remind him of Allah, trying to bring him back to his senses. If he does not go back to his senses, in this case they give their verdict to the Muslim ruler, the Muslim imam of the country. And when we say imam, he's not a person who leads prayer in a masjid in, for example, in Birmingham or in somewhere in Europe, who has a congregation of 1,000 or 10,000 or even 100,000. He is not the imam. He is a prayer person leading prayer. The imam is the Muslim ruler who has the army, the civil defense, the police force, who runs the country. This is the imam who can only execute such a verdict, who can only implement the death penalty over an apostate, but not any person. Therefore, if the judges give the verdict to the ruler and the ruler looks into it, and then he carries out this punishment. The Prophet said, whoever changes his religion, execute him. This is not for individuals. So if I'm living in Holland and my next door neighbor is a Muslim or was a Muslim and then says, listen, I don't believe in the Quran, I don't believe in Allah, I don't believe in anything, or changes his religion and becomes a Christian and he wears the cross, I say, I'm a hot-blooded Muslim, I'm going to chop his head off and then I'm going to say that he did this and that. If I do this, I'll go to hell. Because you cannot give takfir without the fulfillment of the conditions and being sure that the obstacles are not there. This is not for individuals to be done. This is only to be carried out by the Muslim ruler. And we know what happened when Van Gogh, the director, the Dutch director, was executed on the streets. How many problems resulted from that. Always look at the consequences. Don't be impulsive. Do things without knowledge, like these keyboard knights that we see on Twitter, on Facebook, on the internet, calling for jihad and calling for killing people and making takfir to all people around you except them. Don't be like them. This is not the way of the Salaf. This is not the way of the Prophet ﷺ. Whoever says to a person, Ya kafir, one of them has to take it. So either he is a real kafir, or if not, it's going to bounce back at you. One should be really careful when going into these things. So, yes, in Islam, the punishment for apostasy is death penalty only after a panel of judges interrogate, speak to that person, try to bring him back to his senses. If he still insists, then this is worse than grand treason, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Nabila says, I wanted to know what are the best options for Muslim females in the 21st century for jobs, careers that she can earn a living from. And what are the guidelines for females wanting to work in the workplace as a teacher, nurse, etc.? The sky is the limit. So as a female, you can work anything that is halal, providing that you are segregated from men. So if you teach in an all-female school or university, go ahead, be my guest. If you work in a department that is totally segregated, so you have your own toilets and you have your own resting rooms and you have your own offices and no male interacts with you, comes in physically, and all of your work is done through emails and phone calls and etc., this is totally permissible. Working in a hospital, if it's segregated, again, if you work with females, again, this is permissible. The guideline is that the job itself is halal, that you are abiding by the Islamic attire, so you're wearing the hijab and you're not wearing anything that is tight or see-through or something that is short, and that you do not mix with men. Other than that, it is not permissible. Khushnuma, I hope I pronounced the name right, says that jaggery in Urdu, gur, is made in very big kadiya, that is a big pot. And these pots are not covered and not washed. Sometimes dogs lick these pots, and again, jaggery is made in these unclean pots. Is this jaggery permitted to eat? I heard dogs' saliva is nabak or najis. So I think that the questioner is asking about a meal that is prepared in big pots, and these pots are usually uncovered and never washed. And dogs come and lick from these pots. So is it najis? Is it impure? The answer is yes. The greatest impurity is the impurity of the dog's saliva when it licks in a pot or a dish or a plate, in utensils. This is the grand impurity. Why? Because you have to wash it once with soil and 7 times with water. While normal impurities such as urine, you simply wash it, squeeze it, and that's it. And the minor impurity is the urine of a child less than 2 years of age who is breastfeeding and did not eat. And it has to be male. You don't have to wash the urine of such a male child. You just simply pour water over it, sprinkle it, and that's it. You don't have to squeeze it and do that again. So such a meal this made in, or this jaggery is prohibited for you to eat because the pot and the food in it are all considered to be impure and you have to throw it out. Abdullah says, is it mandatory or considered good to visit the graves of relatives such as parents on regular basis? There are people who tend to do so in their death anniversaries. If a person chooses not to visit the graves of their parents, is it considered bad or means they do not love their parents? If a person loves their parents, they will seek their forgiveness in prayers. I have witnessed this in Bangladesh among my relatives. What is the Islamic view on this? Visiting the graveyards is something recommended in Islam for men. The Prophet ﷺ said that I requested Allah Azza wa Jal to visit my mother's grave and He allowed me. And He said ﷺ, visit the graveyards because it reminds you of the hereafter. So this is a ibadah, this is a form of worship. You do it regularly, you do it once a year, no problem in that. Appointing it or doing it on the anniversary of the death of the deceased, this is an innovation. Specifying Eid only to go in Eid and visit the graveyards to congratulate them of the Eid, this is an innovation. Doing it every Friday after Salah, this is an innovation. Doing it openly in any time without specifically appointing a time, this is permissible, inshaAllah, and there's no problem in that. Tawsif says, what the Prophet ﷺ did in his life, is this considered to be sunnah? Whatever the Prophet did ﷺ in his life, is this considered to be sunnah? The answer is, sunnah is defined by 3 or 4 things. The first thing is that whatever the Prophet ﷺ had said, this is his verbal sunnah. So when the Prophet says ﷺ, do this or do that, when you enter the masjid, enter it with your right foot and say, Bismillah, Allahumma salli wa sallim ala Muhammad, Allahumma aftah li abwaba rahmatik. So this is a sunnah. The Prophet told us to do this. Then you have the actions. So when you hear or read the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, like in the hadith of Ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, in Sahih Bukhari, that the Prophet used to raise his hands ﷺ, in salat when he offers the first takbir, Allahu Akbar, and then when he offers ruku', Allahu Akbar, and then when he raises his head, Sami Allahu liman hamidah. So these are 3 places in prayer that the Prophet used to raise his hands. This is part of the sunnah because the companion described the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet did not order it, but he did it. So verbal, action, and approval. And this is when the Prophet ﷺ did not say it and he did not do it, but he did not comment on it. So this is also sunnah. The Prophet once prayed Al-Fajr sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and after prayer he saw a man praying 2 rak'ahs near a pillar. So he went and stood by him and he said, is Fajr 4? Is Fajr 4? So the man concluded his prayer quickly and said, O Prophet of Allah, I left home, I did not pray the 2 rak'ahs of sunnah, of Fajr, and when I reached the masjid, you've started the congregation prayer, so I joined you, and now I'm making up for these 2 missed rak'ahs. So the Prophet ﷺ left. He did not say, no, that's wrong. But he didn't even say, oh, you did well. The scholars say, because he did not comment, this is an approval, which means that this is sunnah. So these are the 3 types of sunnah. There is a 4th type, which is the physical description of the Prophet ﷺ, how he looked, how big his eyes were, how black his hair was, the color and the tone of his skin, etc. Now, Tawsif's question is, what the Prophet ﷺ had done in his life, is it all sunnah? The answer is no. Answering the call of nature is not a sunnah. The way that he went from one place to the other, whether riding a camel or a mule, is not a sunnah. These are normal things that people do. Wearing the turban and covering the head, This is not a sunnah. This is the customs. Wearing a longi and wearing a certain dress. This is not a sunnah. This is what the Arabs used to wear at the time. So if I come and say, no, I'm going to follow the sunnah and do what the Prophet used to do in such a fashion, like going to my office tomorrow morning on a mule, that would be ridiculous. It's not a sunnah. The Prophet did not order us to ride a mule to work, and he did not recommend that. So this is something that the Prophet used to do due to customs, due to traditions. It has nothing to do with religion. So not everything that the Prophet had done, ﷺ, is part of the sunnah, unless it is related to the religion or he recommended that, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. The last question in tonight's episode, Abdullah says, I was wondering, many Muslims wear the thobe, the jubbah, and the kufi hat, and call it sunnah. But is there any proof that they are sunnah? Would it be lawful to call the kufi and the jubbah sunnah? Again, this is similar to the previous question. These are not part of the sunnah because the Prophet did not order us to wear a kufi, which is the head cap, or to wear a jubbah like this, or to wear a thobe like the white one I'm wearing. This is not part of sunnah. This is part of customs. So it is not something that you would be rewarded for, because the Prophet did not order us to do it, and he did not wear it himself like we do. And sometimes this would not be even recommended. So if you're in the States or in Europe and you decide to wear the Arab thobe while preaching the people, and everybody is in their three-piece suit, this is what the norm they do. This is what they wear. So you would stand out in the crowd, and people may not listen to your teaching because they think that you're teaching a culture related to Arabs, not the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal. And therefore, it is permissible to wear this when you travel if it is part of your customs, if it's part of your country's costume, no problem. But if it's not, and you are from a country that do not wear such clothes, maybe that would be an attire of fame, ثوب الشهرة, that people would look at you and you would feel proud of yourself, and hence you'll be sinful. The Prophet ﷺ forbade us from wearing something that would make us proud and stand out in a crowd, like a person wearing a pink suit, for example. Wow, everybody's looking at him, but yes, this is not something recommended in Islam, and it depends on the pros and the cons, depends on the advantages and disadvantages to those who you are giving da'wah and calling them, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. This is all the time we have. Until we meet next time, fi amanillah, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Your mercy is what I beseech. Keep in my heart your remembrance and